Welcome to part two of Caring for Your Digestion and Weight, a workshop on Ayurveda and essential oils. If you haven't subscribed and you enjoy these videos, please subscribe so you're notified when new installments are ready to view. This video covers both how we eat and begins to discuss what to eat. So hopefully you've watched the last video and done an assessment of your digestion so that you can hone in on which of these practices might particularly apply to you. So let's dive right in. So what you eat matters, particularly if you're having any digestive discomfort. And we will get there, but it's actually even more important to consider how you eat. So it's not so much what you eat, but what you're able to digest. So we want to make sure we're creating optimal conditions for our bodies to be able to actually digest and assimilate what we put in it, or it won't matter if what we eat is healthy. So the first thing on the how to eat has to do with routine, establishing a routine around eating, eating 3 meals a day, every day at roughly the same time every day. So when our body knows it's getting nourished on a regular basis, it's going to be less inclined to hold on. It'll be able to let go. When we're talking about being able to let go in terms of if you have any issues with constipation, or maybe it's around holding on to weight. So creating that routine and giving your body the message that it's going to get nourished on a regular basis is really important. And it's okay once or twice a week, depending on your constitution, to fast through a meal, usually dinner. So that's sort of a caveat to that. But in general, just not kind of having your eating routine be all over the place. Second is no snacking. So eating between meals. It's important because we need to give our bodies a chance, our stomach, the chance to be completely empty for several hours between meals. If you're constantly sort of feeding yourself little bits of food all the time, then your body is only going to be able to constantly burn food, and it's never going to get to the point where it begins to burn fat, which is a more sustainable energy source for your body. So that speaks to both weight and just your energy level. As well as the fact that being hungry, the feeling of being hungry in your body stimulates your digestion. It gets those digestive juices ready to go. So your digestion will actually be better when you have that emptiness and that feeling of hunger between meals. So sitting down to eat, being mindful about the way you eat, sitting, eating slowly, chewing your food fully, trying not to have any distractions. So in the last video, we talked about pratyahara, which was discernment around using your senses. So thinking about not distracting yourself by watching TV or by having a heated discussion while you're also eating. You can engage all of your senses actually in digestion, and all are necessary to help you digest well. So think about, looking at your food, noticing the beauty of your food, smelling your food, of course, tasting it when you're chewing fully. Um, Think about too, when you're cooking, that smell of like a pop and sizzle in the pan, that can stimulate your digestion. Eating with your hands, all of these things, using your senses when you're eating. So taking pleasure in eating and not just scarfing your food. Staying away from cold water, always, but in particular during a meal. And in fact, taking in very little water at all during your meal, just enough to wash your food down. But too much water, and in particular cold water, it's like putting water on a campfire, and it'll just start smoldering and smoking, and isn't really going to burn your food. So we have this thing called agni, which is our digestive fire, and pouring too much water on it while you're eating, and cold water anytime is going to dampen your agni. So thinking about the right amount of food. So if you're eating slowly enough, you'll notice that at a certain point in your meal, you'll have a little burp. So if you eat just to that first burp, that is your stomach attempting to make more room for more food. So that's a sign that maybe you have enough in there already. So take a pause when you feel that. Assess if you're actually still hungry. And that's a way to make sure that you're not overeating and then having to have this heavy meal to digest. Okay, so now we can start to talk about what to eat. Each body type requires a slightly different type of diet, but there are some things that are pretty universal to all of us, and that is food combinations. Some food combinations are especially difficult for your digestion and should be avoided, and then some are particularly beneficial. So we're going to start by going through some common ones to avoid first, and then we'll talk about foods to pair for maximum benefit. So I have not in any way included an entire list of bad food combinations, but just thinking about some of the more common ones and the biggest ones to be mindful of happen to be around animal products. So if you're eating dairy, you'll want to make sure that you're not eating a lot of heavy, salty foods with your dairy. No fruit with dairy, no meat or eggs, nightshades or beans, which can be a lot of the things that we normally eat, right? Things like pizza or burritos. It's really common to the Western diet to combine dairy with all of these types of foods. Exceptions to this could be ghee, which is a clarified butter. Um, is non-toxic in that way. Fresh cheese like paneer, some goat cheese can be an exception. Meat and grains together is really heavy. It's just too much for your digestion. So as I said, you're going to notice that these worst offenders involve animal products. So if you're vegan, you don't have to worry quite as much about food combinations. And this isn't a pitch for being vegan because that's not right for everyone. But it's just a note to be more careful when you're eating animal products, that food combinations can be more of an issue. So if you find yourself constipated, you might think back to what you might have been eating together. So not maybe so much what you ate, but what you ate together. So let's talk about helpful food combinations. So when we're talking about eating fruit, Ayurveda recommends that fruit only be eaten on an empty stomach and by itself and earlier in the day. So fruit is digested entirely differently and at a different rate as other food. So it's best taken by itself if it's raw. If you are stewing or cooking your fruit, you can put it in a simple smoothie with cinnamon and non-dairy milk, and it's less of a problem. With things like beans, nuts, and grains, um, always soaking your beans and nuts and then removing the skins. The skins aren't bad to eat, they're just a little harder on your digestion. Adding ghee and some other oil, spices to grains and to beans and nuts helps them to be more digestible as well. The rest of the foods on this list are things that we might consider to be treats or um, that you might think of as not recommended, but we are human and we consume these things and we enjoy our life and it's okay. So there are things we can do to counteract the negative effects of some of these treats as well. So alcohol is the first one. So if you're consuming alcohol, you might think about taking a glass of warm water with turmeric after. Alcohol in Ayurveda, we call it fire water. So as you might expect, it has a hot quality. It can cause inflammation. It's dehydrating. So having warm water with turmeric counteracts those effects. Chocolate. Chocolate is also great to have with hot water, so as a drink with cardamom, or to have that great chocolate that has red chilies with it to break up the heaviness of the chocolate. Coffee is best with milk and with nutmeg. So coffee aggravates vata. So it has a light and mobile quality. So it can cause a feeling of ungroundedness. It can cause anxiety. So when you have it with milk, it grounds it. The nutmeg is also grounding and reducing and warming for anxiety. And then finally, pizza, right? Pizza happens always. And pizza is one of those foods, if you think about food combinations, we've got, a grain with cheese, with a nightshade, which I didn't mention, but tomatoes, tomato sauce. So it can wreak havoc with your digestion. But I will never tell anyone not to eat pizza. So thinking about ways we can make pizza more palatable or more digestible, I guess I should say. Choosing a pizza that has an olive oil sauce, perhaps, instead of the red sauce. And then always having a bitter green salad with your pizza at the end of the meal with lemon, with pepper. All of those things help to digest the heaviness of the pizza and to reduce the toxic buildup from that food combination. So the next thing we're going to look at is how to feel satisfied. So we're saying don't snack between meals, right? So how are you going to feel satisfied enough? We want to get to that hungry place, but you don't want to be ravenous for hours between meals. So we have to make sure that we're eating enough at each meal. So think about if you take your two cupped hands in front of you and piling a decent amount of food in that that's a generally a good place to start for the amount of food to have at a meal. And then doing things like adding oils and spices, digestive spices like turmeric, ginger, cumin, fennel, coriander. Those are all digestive spices that help you to also feel satisfied in your meal. Adding oils, ghee, sesame oil, olive oil, coconut oil, all will help you to feel satisfied. But most importantly, and what I want to talk about today is the 6 tastes. Ayurveda identifies 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. And your body gets what it needs from each of those tastes. So if any taste is lacking in your meal, your body's going to crave it and go looking for it, usually not in the most beneficial way, which is what causes that kind of like grazing after a meal thing that happens so often. So we're going to go through each of these tastes, their benefits, and some examples of how you can add them to your meals. So we're going to start with sweet. So sweet is the easiest to get and actually should form the bulk of your food. So we have fresh fruit, ghee, dairy products, rice and wheat, squashes, root veggies, dates, coconut, and meat. All of these are sweet tastes. So of course in Ayurveda, sweet, things like dates or something light and sweetened with honey. We're not talking about birthday cake and ice cream necessarily when we say sweet. Sweet foods do tend to be heavier, so we're decreasing the sweet foods in the spring and the late winter when our digestion is already more sluggish. So spring is a good time if you want to take a break from dairy, meat, or sugar. This is most often when we cleanse. Sweet foods are digested first, so they're best taken at the beginning of a meal. Taken after a meal, sometimes it can upset your digestion. So, and actually a small amount of glucose at the beginning of a meal can help you to lose weight. So you've had that sweet taste, it's part of your meal, you're satisfied, so you're not piling on dessert and more than you need at the end of a meal. So it could be a date, or starting the meal with lighter, sweeter things like carrots, sweet potatoes, or root veggies. So moving on to sour taste. Sour is cranberries, pomegranates, obviously lemon and lime, pickles. Tomatoes are considered to be sour. The sour taste has a drying effect, so we're decreasing sour in the fall when the season is already drier. Salty is easy. We all love salt. Sea vegetables, nuts, soy sauces all contribute to the salt in your diet. It assists in your digestion, and it is also dehydrating. So we take less salt in the summertime. Moving on to pungent. Another word for pungent is spicy. So that includes pretty much all spices, but in particular black pepper, garlic, ginger, radishes, mustard. All of these are spicy or pungent. So we, of course, decrease those in the summer where we're already hot. Spice increases heat. And eat more in the spring because pungent or spice opens up congestion, cuts through kapha heaviness. Bitter can include, the easiest way to get bitter is through greens. Almost any green is going to be bitter. So kale, Swiss chard, dandelion greens. On the spice side, fenugreek and turmeric also are bitter. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, eating bitters such as salad after a meal, at the end of the meal, is better than doing so before. The bitter taste is detoxifying. We take more of it in the spring. But it also has a bit of a cold quality and can weaken Agni. So if you take it at the beginning of the meal, it can diminish the digestion of everything that follows. So it's best to have that bitter salad actually at the end of your meal. And then finally, we have astringent. So astringent is something that we just need a little bit of. It's great in the spring. It's great for your immune system. Astringent foods are pomegranates, beans and lentils, that lentil soup. Honey is actually astringent. When you have apples with their skin on them, the skin is astringent. Just make sure that they're organic. And then walnuts, all of these are astringent. So next time, we're going to talk about doshas or constitutions and specific advice for each body type. So again, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like hearing from me, be sure to sign up for my newsletter linked at the end of the video. See you next time.